Welcome to our channel, your source for unedited political speeches, interviews, and statements from across the political spectrum. No filters, no commentary, just what was actually said. Subscribe now to stay informed, directly from the source.
Are an obvious disaster.
We now hear children talking about how do I pretend?
They're not effectively learning, interacting or speaking.
They have this sort of glazed look on their faces.
Mental health disorders, anxiety, depression, OCD.
Is an experience blocker. I don't believe there's a single upside.
Since 2012, all over the developed world, there's been an explosion in mental health problems. And those problems are concentrated among young people, not older people. And they're not just people reporting that they're depressed or down. They're resulting in real-world harms, more self-harming, more young people turning up at accident and emergency. And people have looked at the data, all the alternative possible explanations, but the only thing that fits the data all over the world is the rise of a smartphone-based childhood and social media. A large proportion of children are now exposed to pornography while they're still at primary school. Young people are exposed to graphic violence at an early age, and things like sextortion and sexting. There's also a problem about young women's body image, with real harm done to people's mental health through the exposure to completely artificial body shapes. And concentration among kids is hugely down as a result of constant dopamine hits from social media.
Children, essentially looking as if they can't look up from their smartphones, and that really concerns me.
When children have access to a phone, we have to remember we're literally putting the entire world in their pocket.
They're designed by geniuses to be unputdownable. So when a child could be thinking or reading or playing or making up his own game, talking to his sibling, he will be glued to a machine like we all are.
The statistics are actually worrying, with most teenagers spending on average 5 to 7 hours on smartphone every day.
We now know that 25% of 3 to 4-year-olds have their own smartphone, and over 50% of under 13-year-olds are on social media, which I think is really harmful for healthy childhoods.
Now, when you're sitting in front of the screen, it's a passive process. There are flashing images, there are sounds. It is not the same as hearing vocabulary from family, siblings, parents, grandparents, friends, etc. They're not engaging with their environment. And as a result, it's a very frequent cause of non-verbal children. We
know that this impacts attention because it makes little connections with the dopamine, and therefore we get more and more buzz every single time we're on a phone or we're on a screen, which means that we're wanting more, and we're wanting to get more. Every time we get a like, we're looking to look at these things.
There have been a number of studies showing that kids who have they're not just using their smartphone, even if they have their smartphone in their bag next to them when they are dealing with academic tasks, they will perform worse than somebody who doesn't have a phone with them.
I find it completely amazing we've given them to children.
All over the country, groups of parents and educators are coming together to fight back, and they're laying down a challenge to the people over there to do something about these massive social problems.
Does the Education Secretary agree that children's education outcomes are negatively affected by smartphones? And if she does, will she back our amendment to ban them from the classroom for good?
Another headline-grabbing gimmick.
Why did Labour MPs vote against banning phones in schools last week?
Prime Minister?
Because it's completely unnecessary.
The shift to a smartphone-based childhood is displacing time in the real world with real friends. The number of children who feel isolated and lonely at school has gone up all over the world. And because apps are designed to be addictive and to drip-feed kids dopamine, kids are arriving at school tired and unable to concentrate. Physically, the kids are being changed too. Eyesight is getting worse, and young people have the kind of bad backs that older people used to have. And here in Britain, 1 in 5 young people, young teenagers, report being bullied online, with things ranging from sextortion to playground bullying.
And they're not having a choice really as to whether they use them or not. There's a lot of peer pressure surrounding the decision to when families give their child a smartphone.
TikTok is, again, a brain decimator.
Mental health issues has frankly skyrocketed, and the screens are almost always part of the problem.
It makes everything gamified, it makes everything really, really exciting and buzzy, which means that when they actually try to do dull things, they really struggle.
What I hear a lot from my patients' parents is that they try to remove the device from the child, but the child starts scream and shout and they throw tantrums, etc. That will happen because you're removing from the child something that is extremely pleasant and gives them a reward. This is a phase they have to go through.
We know that there are really insidious problems that are probably much bigger than we realise in young men with erectile dysfunction, thought to be due to watching too much porn, and we know most of the porn is violent.
But there are things we can do about this problem. All across Europe, countries are banning phones in schools, and most states in America are doing the same thing. I talk to young people a lot as part of my job as an MP and as part of my work on committee here. And the striking thing is that young people themselves don't want to be online all the time. And when you can create a situation in which they're all in the real world and they don't have to worry about checking for the latest notification, actually young people enjoy it. And in a sense, all we're trying to do is allow them to enjoy the same kind of play in the real world, the same kind of enjoyment, the same kind of smartphone-free childhood that we got to enjoy. And that is something that the young people themselves want. When kids have their phones in the classroom, it makes the teacher's job so much harder. Teachers are constantly having to battle to get kids to put their phones away, to get them to pay attention. And the reason why schools don't have good policies on this is that a minority of parents can be unreasonable about wanting to be able to contact their kids at any moment of the day. Now, none of us needed that when we were growing up, and it isn't necessary. But the job really is for us as politicians to take responsibility here and to set down a clear expectation and standard and to change the norms so we don't have phones in our classrooms anymore. Only about 1 in 10 secondary schools has a proper ban on phones, where they're handed in at the start of the day and then given back at the end. And the Department for Education's own behaviour survey shows the extent of the problem, with more than half of children in GCSE year reporting phones being used, disrupting lessons when they shouldn't be. A ban on phones in schools is not the only thing we need, but it's the very first no-brainer thing we should do to create 7 hours in the day when kids are not having to worry about their latest notification, not scrolling social media, and actually enjoying some time in the real world. There are bigger, wider questions. Most tech firms are violating their own terms and conditions and letting children who are underage use their platforms. We do need to have a conversation about a proper age of consent for when people go onto social media and the right age for doing these things. But the no-brainer and the first thing we should do is get phones out of our classrooms.
No guidelines, no ifs, no buts, a very clear didactic ban, so there's no debate about this. And because of that, if we manage to get to that stage, at the very least, children will not have access to their phones for a significant percentage of the day, which is 8 to 9 hours.
As a parent, there is nothing that makes me more angry than when I feel something is being done unjustly to children, my children. So be furious.
Because we're seeing more and more schools around the UK now who have implemented a phone ban, and kids do better academically, they're well behaved, they have better teacher retentions.
We know that a lot of MPs are very much on side of this. We've got a lot of younger MPs now that sit in Parliament that have younger children, really understand the issues. I've spoken to a lot of them myself.
Children need a chance to be children, and that's what they're going to look back on. They're going to look back on the challenges they made, and that's how children learn. They learn through pushing the boundaries, they learn through doing things that are slightly scary, and they learn through doing things independently.
You know, you don't have to be going skiing or learning the cello to have a nice childhood. I was doing things that don't cost anything, and they were magic, and they formed my brain today, and I'm very grateful for them.
If you want to keep up with what's really being said in politics, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications.